You know what? I thought I'd seen everything. 8 decades on this planet, I've watched empires rise and fall, witnessed history in the making, played characters who've cracked under pressure. But what happened during that national address last Tuesday night, that wasn't just a president having a bad day, that was democracy itself having a nervous breakdown on live television. I'm Robert De Niro, and I've never been more terrified for this country than I am right now. Picture this. You're sitting in your living room, maybe having dinner, when suddenly every channel cuts to the Oval Office. Emergency address from the president. Your heart starts racing because you know this only happens when something serious is going down. War, natural disaster, national crisis. You expect to see a leader, someone calm and reassuring, ready to guide the nation through whatever storm we're facing. Instead, what walked into that frame was a man who looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. Hair disheveled, tie crooked, eyes darting around like he was seeing things that weren't there. And that's when I knew we were about to witness something unprecedented in American history. The first red flag, he wasn't reading from the teleprompter. Every president uses one during national addresses. It's standard protocol, keeps you on message, prevents disasters, but not this guy. He was winging it, and when you're addressing 330 million Americans during a crisis, winging it isn't just unprofessional, it's dangerous. Within the first 5 minutes, he was already spiraling. Started talking about the media lying about him, the deep state working against him, how everyone was conspiring to make him look bad. I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is supposed to be about the crisis we're facing, about solutions, about leadership. What the hell is this? But here's where it gets really scary. As he's rambling about conspiracies, his voice starts cracking, not with emotion, not with passion for the country, but with rage, pure, unfiltered rage. You could see the veins in his neck bulging, his face getting redder and redder, hands moving around like he was conducting some angry orchestra that only he could hear. I've played unhinged characters before, Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull. I know what a breakdown looks like, and this was it. Except this wasn't a movie, this wasn't fiction. This was the President of the United States having a complete psychological collapse on the biggest stage in the world. Then came the moment that will haunt me forever. He started interrupting himself. Mid-sentence, he'd veer off into something completely different, then try to circle back. But by then he'd forgotten what his original point was. It was like watching someone lose a fight with their own thoughts in real time. The economy for 30 seconds, then immigration, then his legal troubles, back to the economy but a completely different aspect, then some conspiracy theory about vote counting, then how unfairly he's treated by the press. It was exhausting to watch. I can't imagine what his staff was going through. You know what the scariest part was? The lies. Not just the usual political spin we're used to, but complete fabrications. Numbers that were backwards from reality. Statistics he was clearly making up on the spot. Stories that sounded like fever dreams. At one point, he claimed crime rates had dropped 90% in cities that actually saw increases. I actually laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurdly disconnected from reality. But here's what kept me awake that night. He wasn't trying to fool us. He believed his own lies. When a president can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy, when he's living in some alternate universe where facts don't matter, that's when you know democracy is in real trouble. I kept thinking about other national addresses I've witnessed. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis, steady as granite, showing real leadership when the world was on the brink. Reagan after the Challenger explosion, finding exactly the right words to help a nation grieve. Obama after Sandy Hook, demonstrating genuine compassion in the face of unimaginable tragedy. They all understood one fundamental truth. When you're speaking from behind that desk, you're not talking to your supporters or your enemies. You're talking to the entire country, to our allies around the world, to history itself. The weight of that office, the dignity of the presidency, it all has to come through in your words, your demeanor, your presence. This was the opposite of that. This was a man completely detached from the responsibilities of leadership, using the most sacred platform in American democracy as his personal therapy session. But wait, it gets worse. 20 minutes into this disaster, he started naming names. going after specific reporters, politicians, judges, settling personal scores on live television, using a national address like his Twitter account, except the whole world was watching, allies and enemies alike, seeing the leader of the free world completely lose his composure. What are they thinking right now? What are they writing in their reports back to their governments? They're thinking America is vulnerable, that the guy supposed to lead the free world can't even lead himself through a simple speech. They're thinking this is their opportunity to take advantage of our weakness, our chaos, our complete lack of steady leadership. I could feel the panic of his staff. You couldn't see them, but you could sense their terror. They knew this was a catastrophe unfolding in real time, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. They were probably frantically trying to figure out how to get him to stop talking before he said something that started a war or crashed the markets. The moment those cameras stopped rolling, it was pure damage control. Within minutes, statements were flying out trying to clarify what he meant, walking back the worst parts, spinning this train wreck into something that made sense. But you can't unring that bell. You can't take back what the whole world just witnessed. And his own party, Republicans who've defended him through everything, who've stood by him through scandal after scandal, even they struggled to spin this one. The best they could manage was calling it passionate. Passionate? That wasn't passion. That was a complete mental breakdown broadcast to the world. Here's what really gets me angry. There are real problems facing this country, real challenges that need real leadership. People struggling, families hurting, communities divided. Instead of addressing any of that, instead of using this moment to bring people together and offer solutions, we got 25 minutes of self-pity and conspiracy theories. That's not just unpresidential, that's a betrayal of everyone counting on government to work, everyone needing leaders who actually know how to lead. His supporters will probably defend this. They'll say he was telling it like it is, fighting for them, that the media is trying to make him look bad. They'll turn this disaster into proof of how unfairly he's treated. But the rest of us, people who still believe in competence and dignity and basic professionalism, we saw something terrifying. We saw a man who's completely lost control, not just of himself, but of the situation, his administration, his responsibilities as president. And that should scare everyone, regardless of politics. Because if he can't handle the pressure of giving a speech, how is he going to handle a real crisis, a terrorist attack, a natural disaster, a nuclear threat? The answer is he won't. He'll fall apart just like he did that night, and that puts all of us at risk. This wasn't just a bad speech or an embarrassing moment we can laugh about and forget. This was a warning, a preview of what happens when someone fundamentally unfit for the job gets the job anyway. It was a reminder that words matter, leadership matters, competence matters. We can't just hope things will get better on their own. We can't assume this will somehow work out. That night proved it won't. That night proved we're on our own. So it's up to us, every American who still believes in this country, who believes in what we can become when we're led by people who actually know how to lead. We have to do better. We have to demand better, because democracy isn't guaranteed. And what we saw that night was democracy in crisis. But here's what nobody's talking about: the panic behind closed doors after that speech. Staff members were literally crying, not from sadness, but terror. They knew they'd witnessed something that could fundamentally damage America's standing. I've been on movie sets when everything goes wrong, but this was different. This wasn't a movie that could be reshot. This was real life, broadcast live to the world, and there was no taking it back. Within hours, foreign leaders were making frantic calls. The British Prime Minister had to reassure Parliament that America was still a reliable ally. Even our enemies were trying to figure out what they'd just watched. You want to know what really kept me up that night? It wasn't just the spectacle. It was recognizing the patterns from characters I've played who were unraveling, losing their grip on reality. In Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle slowly descended into madness, the way he saw enemies everywhere, the way reality bent around his delusions. That night I saw too many similarities. The difference is, Travis was fiction. This was the president. Or Rupert Pumpkin in The King of Comedy, a man so convinced of his own importance that he lost touch with reality, believing his own fantasies. Sound familiar? But the most terrifying parallel was with Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull. The way rage consumed him, the way he turned every conversation into a fight, the way he couldn't stop himself even when he was destroying everything around him. That's what I saw that night, a man consumed by rage, unable to control himself, lashing out at anyone and everyone while the whole world watched. The difference is, those were characters. They were meant to be cautionary tales, warnings about what happens when someone loses their grip on reality. They weren't supposed to be instructional videos for how to be president. And that's when it hit me. We're not just watching a presidency fall apart. We're watching democracy itself being tested in ways it was never designed to handle. The founders never imagined we'd have a president who couldn't tell the difference between reality and fantasy, who would use the highest office in the land as his personal therapy session. I've lived through a lot of presidents, good and bad. I've seen incompetence, I've seen scandal, I've seen failure, but I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a president so fundamentally disconnected from the responsibilities of leadership, so completely unable to rise to the moment when the moment demanded everything. The real tragedy isn't just what we witnessed, it's what it says about where we are as a country. This wasn't an accident. This was the inevitable result of years of enabling, of making excuses, of pretending that competence doesn't matter as long as you're on the right team. We've created a system where performance matters more than substance, where showmanship is valued over leadership. That night, we saw where it leads. Complete breakdown of everything the presidency represents. So the question isn't just what are we going to do about it? It's whether we're willing to admit what we saw was unacceptable, and whether we're prepared to demand better. Because democracy isn't a spectator sport. It requires all of us to be engaged, to hold our leaders accountable. If that night taught us anything, it's that we can't afford to look away anymore. The stakes are too high, and the cost of complacency is too great.